So Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and everyone Shabbat Shalom. I hope that you all are having a great day in the eyes of the Father. So, this is a continuation from our last lesson on giving praise and thanksgiving to the Father. Um, there will be a third part unless the Father says otherwise. I'm thinking about coming out of the canon when it comes to talking about praising the Father and giving thanksgiving, giving thanks, and going into the other books let's talked about to show who else praises the Father, and what other things praise the Father. So, just to show that it's more than just us meeting humans and such. But like I said, that's only if the Father gives the okay. We know how these things go when you plan them. The Father will come in, knock everything off the table until you start over. So hopefully we'll be able to do that this next lesson. All right. So I want to start off by addressing a comment that was made regarding last lesson. The comment said, Yahuwah's name never ceased to be great. Make Yahuwah's name known again. Now, without malice or strife, I responded by saying that this lesson was designed to show how to praise Yahuwah in such a way that will make his name great. Not saying that, the Father's name was never great, but to praise and, even magnifying his name makes it great, right? Now, the issue, I don't think the person understood, and that's my fault for not making it clear enough, but the issue is that the reason um, the reason we have to go through all these steps is because of the destruction and the disrespect that was put on the Father's name. So now we have to pinpoint certain areas that highlight the proper steps or the key to properly praising and giving thanks to the Father. Just like with every lesson that we have, we have to understand that there are actual steps that come with this walk that we're in, right? That comes with being in this faith. So just saying, I praise you, Father, I give you thanks, I magnify your set apart name without actually showing it doesn't do you any good. Now, in that comment, it was also said, make Yahuwah's name known again. Now, the key here, and this is what we will continue to work on and learn throughout this lesson and other lessons in the future, is that once you know his name, what do you do after that? Not only that, but there has to be an understanding for the people that are in the truth. So it's not per se to make his name known again. It's about his name, restoring his name to the proper prominence. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And hopefully if that person that made the comment is watching, they will be able to get something out of it this time. Okay. All right. I want to do a little bit of a review, but before I do, I want to share some of what we will be talking about today. So we are going to focus on primarily two definitions that are basically the same. One is a derivative of the other. The first being the H3034, which is yada. All right, it's a prime root, means to hold out. But what we want to look at primarily is confess or confession, praise, giving thanks, give thanks, or thanksgiving. Um, Again, you see that It comes from Yod, which is the open one, indicating power means a direction. But it also means to give thanks, to praise, to celebrate. Since thanksgiving and praise naturally follow the acknowledgement or confession of benefits received. All right. So you're giving thanks for the things that the Father has done for you, basically. All right. Now we have Yada, all right, to give thanks, to praise. All right. Describes the act of giving thanks and praise to Elohim. The verb primarily refers to giving thanks. The majority instances of Yada in the Old Testament are in Psalms. This is where we've been for these past couple of lessons. Like other terms with similar meanings, Yada is often accompanied by an explanation of the reason for the thanks or praise. Right? So we can see an example of this in the birth of Leah's son in Genesis 29 and 35. And she conceived again and bore a son and said, "This time I will praise Yahuah." Therefore, she called his name Judah or Yehuda, which means praise or thanksgiving. Then she ceased bearing. Now, in Hebrew, since Yehuda shares the same root as Yada, Yehuda means praise, or more literally, I will praise Yah, or Yah is praise. All right. Okay. So to start with the review, um, we're going to go over some reasons for which people thank Elohim. All right. And we're going to start here in Psalms 90, 99, and 3. All right. Let them praise your great and awesome name. Set apart is He. Now, what we're doing right now, we're doing a little bit of a review. So this might seem a little familiar to you because this is from last lesson, but I want to pick it up here because it'll go into the what we're going to talk about today. So just to give yourself a little refresher, this is what we're doing. Okay. Now, like I said, remember we talked about this before, right? But in the ESV, we have awesome. So I have these other two translations up here, and let's read these. Let them praise thy great name, for it is awful and set apart. And that's in the Septuagint. Now, in the Aramaic Bible, it says, let them praise your great and terrible name. Right? So that led us here to the H3372, which is Yahweh. It's a prime root to fear or to revere, to have reverence, right? To fear, be afraid, to fear Elohim, all right? Be honored, terrible, dreaded, or awesome. Mm. So in the lesson on showing reverence to the Father, we show how all these things go hand in hand. So the point that I'm trying to make here is this, number one, familiarity with Yahuwah's name emphasizes intimate knowledge of him rather than a particular label, which is why I made the statement in the opening about just knowing the Father's name is not enough. There has to be some action behind it. Just like Aki Nabatyahu was saying, he got up in the middle of the night and started praising the Father, but it was an action that he was doing. He wasn't using just mere words, right? All right. So let's take a look at Psalms 91 and 14. Because he holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. He knows my name. Even this emphasizes an intimate knowledge of Elohim rather than a particular label, right? So verses 1 to 2 of this Psalms demonstrate that David knows several names for Yahuwah, right? But none are repeated. Instead, the idea behind knowing Yahuwah's name is having a deep love for him and an awareness of his character and nature. Now, last lesson I said that this was another way to make Yahuwah's name great again. More importantly, I stated how this was what was lacking when it comes to this faith or people in this walk right now. And this is what our ancestors neglected when they disobeyed the Father's commandments. There was a Facebook post that stated that since everybody is praying to our ancestors, ask them why they didn't obey the Most High. And that sums this lesson up. You know, Again, the key to all of this is to one understand that amongst the people of this covenant, the Father's name wasn't the focus anymore. All right. And from the previous lessons, we saw how the people turned to idols, right? How they will raise up altars for these idols and simply forget who their true creator was. So this is another reason why we have to put so much effort into praising the Father now. We have to show that we've learned from my ancestors' mistakes. Okay. So back to 91 verses 1 and 2. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to Yahuah, my refuge and my fortress, my Elohim, in whom I trust. All right. Another reason for which people thank Elohim is for the goodness of Elohim. And we'll see an example of this in Psalms 54 and 6. With free offering, with a free will offering, I will sacrifice to you. I will give thanks to your name, O Yahuwah, for it is good. Once again, this goes back to the Father's name. So I guess you kind of see where we're going with this. It's not just making his name known again. You're doing something. There's an action involved. Now we can also see this in Psalms 54 and 1. O Elohim, save me by your name and vindicate me by your might. All right. So David appeals to Elohim to pay attention to his prayer, requesting rescue and vindication. He appeals to Elohim because of his reputation, which is his name, and power, which is his might. All right. Okay. So that's a little bit of a review. I think we got it under control now. Now, back to today's lesson. One of the derivatives of yada is the H8426, which is toda. So this is the other one, the other definition that we're going to pay close attention to. Now, this also has to do something with the hand, right? It's an extension of the hand. But more importantly, I want to look at it being admiration, right? A choir of worshipers, confession, praise, and thanks. Right? The primary meaning of this root is to acknowledge or to confess sin, Elohim's character and works, or man's character. Right? The basic difference between this verb and its synonym, which is halal, which we talked about last lesson, is that the latter term tends to stress a claim of, boasting of, or glorying in an object, while yada emphasizes recognition and declaration of a fact, whether good or bad. So this is why you hear people like myself say you must thank the Father in your good times and your bad times, right? No matter what the situation is, no matter what seems right or wrong to you, right? Now, again, the best rendering of this term is confession. For the person confesses or declares Elohim's attributes and works as seen as abundantly in what David had to say. And we'll see here in Psalms 105, 1 and 2, Psalms 106, and Psalms 145. And then I have another one for elsewhere in the Bible. We're going to look at, I think it's First Chronicles 29:13. But let's start with Psalms 105 and 2, 1 and 2. Oh, give thanks to Yahuwah. Call upon his name. Make known his deeds among the peoples. Sing to him. Sing praises to him. Tell of all his wondrous works. All right. So as we see here, this is a confession focusing on Yahuwah's excellence and moral goodness displayed in his actions. Now, Psalms 106, 1 and 2. Praise Yahuwah, oh give thanks to Yahuwah, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. Who can utter the mighty deeds of Yahuwah or declare all his praises? All right. Here, David begins by praising Yahuwah for his steadfast or his hesed love. Now, mentioning his mighty works and affirming the importance of keeping Yahuwah's commandments. You see what I'm saying? He's showing you the verb, the action that it takes when praising the Father, right? He also talks about Yahuwah's mighty deeds, which again refer to Yahuwah's wonders or miracles. So David recognized that the things that the Father has done for him and his people, showing one of the many things that can happen when you keep the Father's commandments, you know. So, like I always say, obedience brings rewards, right? All right. Great is Yahuwah. Let's go to Psalms 145, 1 and 3. I will extol you, my Elohim and King, and bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless your name. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. Great is Yahuwah and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. All right, so let's break these three verses down in Psalms 145 just a little bit. Verse 1, my Elohim and King. All right, so David portrays Elohim as the king, right? We know this from from Psalms 5 and 2. Give attention to the sound of my cry, my king and my Elohim, for to you do I pray. So David was focusing on Elohim as a worthy ruler. Now, how do we know this? Well, we can take a look back at Psalms 145 and go to 11 and 13. They shall speak of the glory or esteem of your kingdom and tell of your power to make known to the children of man your mighty deeds and the glorious splendor of your kingdom. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your dominion endures throughout all generations. Yahuwah is faithful in all his words and kind in all his works. So, again, this is proclamation, right? So, proclamation is the key here. And we talked about that last lesson, and we'll go back to it in a few, but um, to proclaim is to make it known. Right? So you're making it known that Yahuwah is faithful in all his words and kind in all his works. This is praising the Father. All right. So again, we talked about proclaiming last lesson. And one of the things our ancestors got away from um, was actually doing that, was actually making his name known or making his deeds known, you know. And when that happened, that took away their focus from him. And that's where all the idol worship and everything started to come in play. We'll get into that a little bit later. All right. So let's see what the Septuagint has to say. Let them speak of the glory or esteem of thy kingdom and talk of thy government, to make known thy government to the sons of men, and the transcendent glory or esteem of thy kingdom. Thy kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and thy dominion throughout all generations. And again, it says, Yahuwah is faithful in his words and bountiful in all his works. So Elohim's mercy and provision, which are persuasive themes in Psalms 145, as we can see, are showing that its influence that is prevalent and its influence that can penetrate throughout, in this case, throughout the people of the covenant. These things are also characteristics of a good king. So this is going back to what David was trying to do. He was trying to show the people the proper way to go, right? All right. So on to the second verse. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. Now, I will bless your name refers to Elohim's reputation for faithful care of Israel, right? David hopes that Elohim's reputation, which we said before was his name, will increase. Right? So First Chronicles 29 and 13. And now we thank you, our Elohim, and praise your glorious name. All right. Now here the Hebrew word for the name is the H3034, which is Shem. All right. An appellation as a mark or a memorial of individuality. By implication, it means honor, authority. And you go a little bit, you have fame or being famous, the name or being named, and renown. Right. And if you look in the Lexicon Analytical Lexicon, it means the name or standing reputation or fame. Right? So let's take a look at the definition for appellation real quick. All right, so this is the worldly definition. It's a name or a title. For instance, the city fully justifies its appellation, the Pearl of the Orient. Now, similarly, it means the name or a title, honorific, or an epithet, right? The action or giving a name to a person or thing. Now, just out of curiosity, does anyone remember what an epithet was? Remember, we used to talk about that when we were talking about ancient Egypt and how they would put these on their stone tablets. Does anybody remember exactly what that was? Not everybody at once. No worries. No worries. All right. It's an adjective or descriptive phrase expressing a quality characteristic of the person or thing mentioned. For example, old men are often unfairly awarded the epithet of being dirty. So similarly, it's a nickname, a byname, a title we talked about, a label or a tag. For example, Yahuwah Nisi. Yahuwah is my banner. You know, they put all kind of tags on Yahuwah's name, right? Most people's names mean something. Yah is this. Yah is my this. So that's the example, okay? This is why just knowing, going back to my first statement, this is why just knowing Yahuwah's name is one thing, but knowing what that name means and what it stands for and what comes with it is another, right? That's the whole concept or key that I'm trying to display. So the things that are being said here in Psalms is showing how the people were to regard the Father. Because guess what? If they had, continued to focus on the name of Yahuwah like they did the idols, I don't know about you, but I would be in the Tanya Israel right now too. There would be no need for any of this. There'll be no need to do lessons or to have this blueprint because everybody would have gotten it, right? So there must be something that we have to get back to doing that we weren't doing, or I should say that our ancestors before us weren't doing anymore. And that's properly knowing how to praise the Father through all these works. And this is what David was trying to show his people. He was showing them how it was done. All right. Okay. So the third verse from Psalms 145, 1 to 3. His greatness is unsearchable. Now, this emphasizes that Elohim, along with all his worthy qualities, is simply too much for people to comprehend. That's what they're saying, right? But before we get to that, I want to talk about what our ancestors did to Yahuwah's name. I've been mentioning certain things, but I just want to talk about it a little bit. But I got a question. Let's see if somebody can answer this for me. What did our ancestors do to Yahuwah's name? Can anyone give me an example? What was that?
They profaned his name.
Oh man, y'all own it today.
Like
Okay.
in chapter 36 and chapter 37. How many examples you need?
Can somebody mute the Moreh's mic, please? Thank you. Um, okay, profaned. Was there anything else that somebody did? They blotted out. The same thing. It's profane. Anybody else? I know Moreh kind of give you everything, didn't he?
Did they did
Go
they
ahead.
trample underfoot?
Go ahead, Zarakia.
Did they trample it underfoot?
Yeah, yeah. So, like we said, we could say that they profane the name of Yahuwah. All right.
They blasphemed the name. Oh,
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Okay. I'm going to take your privileges away. Um, let's take a look at the definition of profane. To treat something, this is the worldly definition, by the way. To treat something sacred with abuse, irreverence, or contempt. Desecrate. All right. To be a profaner means to debase by a wrong, unworthy, or vulgar use. And then you have of a person or their behavior, not respectful of or orthodox religious practice, or just basically being irrelevant. All right. For example, desecration of the temple by profane adolescents. And again, we're going to see this cycle going through here. Irreverent, impious. Now, impious shows up a lot in these lessons, and for good reason. All right. It means to not show respect or reverence, especially for Elohim. Then you have people being disrespectful, when it comes in regards to the Father's name, not recognizing or focusing on the characteristic or the epithet of the Father's name. Then you have the Achilles heel of them all, the greatest stumbling block known to man. They were straight up being idolatrous. They were idolaters, right? Now, as a verb is to treat something sacred with irreverence or disrespect. Right? And again, you had some of the same stuff popping back up again. You have desecrate, or to be violent, defile, disrespect, contaminate, or pollute, as in pollute the name of. Right? Now, before I go to that definition, can someone tell me how can you pollute the name of the Father besides Moreh? Anybody? Miriam, type it. I know you want to talk, but type it.
Misrepre-
Go ahead.
misrepresent what his name stands for in his commandments, his
Okay.
Torah.
Okay.
Disobeying his laws and commandments.
Okay. Anyone else? But not following the commandments. Yes. Okay. Let's see here. So, from a worldly standpoint, we know that it means to defile or corrupt, which is very befitting here in this case. Then you have taint, which from a worldly standpoint means to contaminate or pollute something. Remember the verb when it comes to profane, one of the similarities is to contaminate, or better yet, to taint is to affect with a bad or undesirable quality. It can mean to tarnish. See, these are the things along with what all you all said, is basically being disobedient. These are the things that the people of the covenant were doing to the Father's name. This is the complete opposite of what David was doing and was trying to accomplish with the covenant people. Remember from the last lesson, when proclaiming the name of the Father, you want other people to join in with you, right? So everybody can be on the same accord. We'll come back to that in a sec. Now, what about to desecrate? That was one of the that's part of one of the definitions, right? So from a worldly aspect, we have here again some of the stuff is repeating itself. We have to violate the sanctity of. Then you have to treat disrespectfully, irreverently, or outrageously. Right? And so again, when you show irreverence, you show a lack of respect for people or things that are generally taken seriously. Now keep in mind that this is all a backdrop that David used to show his commitment to praise the Father. So we have to put that much energy, if not even more energy, into restoring the Father's name to its proper esteem. I want you to see and understand the picture that I'm trying to paint here, right? Just like the time and effort it took our ancestors to profane the name of Yahuwah, we are going to have to do twice as much for the sake of the covenant to restore it among our people, right? That's the key to all of this, right? Restoring the Father's name. All right. So, like I said before, verse 2, praise your name echoes David's statement that he will bless Elohim's name. And as I stated earlier, the verse 3, his greatness is unsearchable, emphasizes that Elohim, along with all his worthy qualities, is simply too much for people to comprehend. So, saying, Father, there aren't enough words to express the love and gratitude that comes with the things you say and do for us. No matter how big or how small your love, your steadfast love, or your said love displays your faithfulness and your kindness and your mercy and your favor upon us. Hallelujah. See, and just like David, he shows his commitment to praising the Father. The Father shows his love by his very nature. So we talked about this before. The Father shows his commitment and action to those who obey him. Right? So Psalms 25 and 10. All the paths of Yahuwah are steadfast love and faithfulness for those who keep his covenant and his testimonies. All right. So we're going to get back to the first definition, with is yada, to give thanks and praise. So therefore, yada is one of the key words for praise. It is continually found in the Hebrew poetry and a parallelism with such praise terms as halal, which we talked about in the first lesson, which means to praise. Then you have zamar, to praise with musical instruments. Now, after this, thanksgiving follows praise. For when one declares Elohim's attributes and works, he cannot help but be thankful for these. Now, just to refresh your memory, I think it was the first lesson concerning praise. We went through what it means to declare, right? Well, let me not jump ahead, but before that, we started with proclaim. I said that we were going to talk about proclaim, so let's do that. All right, to announce officially or publicly. For example, the Joint Manifesto proclaimed that imperialism will be the coalition's chief objective. Then we have to declare something one considers important with due emphasis. For example, she proclaimed that what I had said was untrue. Then you will have declare officially or publicly to be. For example, he proclaimed James II as King of England. Now, similarly, you have declare, announce, pronounce, state, make known, and to give out. Now, going back to what I said a little earlier about David wanting everyone to be on one accord when it came to praising the Father, that same man who praises Elohim also desires that their praises should be joined with his own. And we actually did this last lesson, but let's go back over it again. That is Psalms 34 and 3. Oh, magnify Yahuwah with me, and let us exalt his name together. All right. Now, the Hebrew word here for magnify is the H1431. It's gadal, be great, exalted, or make great. Right? All right, sorry about that. So then when it comes to Psalms 30, 34, and 3, it's declaring Yahuwah's greatness. And David was encouraging others to praise Yahuwah with him. And I made the statement that that's what I think is lacking today. And I hate to say it, but it's lacking, especially among our own people in this walk. We need to get back to what make to making Yahuwah's name great again. We need to get back to focusing on what this is all about, which is Yahuwah, and giving him the praise and the esteem that he deserves. All right. All right. So next up we had Isaiah 43, 20, and 21. The wild beasts will honor him. The jackals and the ostriches, for I give water in the wilderness, rivers in the desert, to give drink to my chosen people, the people whom I formed for myself, that they might declare my praise. The Tehillah with praise, which is what we talked about for last lesson. Now, the Septuagint says, verse 21, a little different. Right? My people whom I have preserved to recount my praises. Right? Now, this brought us to the definition of recount. Now, recount, to tell someone about something, give an account of an event or experience. For example, I recounted the tale to Steve. Now, similar means to tell, relate, or narrate, but what we were focusing on was enumerate. Now, from there, we went to the definition of enumerate, which was to mention a number of things one by one. For example, there is not space to enumerate all his works. And some of you see down there, it was mentioned, it was the name or being mentioned or specified or identify. And all of this is leading up to where we are right now. I know it seems like a lot, but when you think about it, is it really? I mean, is it really that difficult to keep your focus on the creator of all life? To continually thank him for creating you and from pulling the wool from over your eyes so that you may see and understand who he is and who is his son. How about the fact that we were created to declare his praise? Didn't we just read that in Isaiah 43 and 21? So is it really that hard to do these things? For our ancestors, I guess it was, but since we have the blueprint now, and we starting to understand these steps, it really should not be that difficult anymore for some. All right. All right. Now, we have the word for declare, which is the H5608. It's just safar. All right. So this was a culmination of everything we got down to what it means to declare, which is to score with a mark as a tally or record. It means to enumerate, to recount, to celebrate, to declare, right? And also mean to make known or to proclaim. All right. So now back to the root verb, which is toda. The root verb was used to convey the acknowledgement or confession of sin, individually or nationally. Now, the basic idea was clearly observed in David's personal confession, in which he described in Psalm 32 and 5, right? He said, I acknowledge my sin to you, and I did not cover my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to Yahuwah, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin. Now, let's look at the Septuagint. I like the way that reads a little better. I acknowledged my sin and did not conceal my iniquity. I said against myself, I will confess my iniquity to Yahuah. Thereupon thou didst forgive the wickedness of my heart. So that will lead us into what is defined as confession, which is a formal statement admitting that one is guilty of a crime. For example, he signed a confession to the murderers. And similarly, it means admission, owning up, or acknowledgement. Right? Now, what did David say? He said, "I said against myself, I will confess my iniquity to Yahuwah." Right. So all of this is the opposite of concealment and denial. Right. So let's see here. Biblically, it is important to note that the confession of sin is to be made to Elohim. The epitome of national confession is found in the Day of Atonement, right? The ceremony where the high priest laid his hands on the head of the goat, thereby symbolically transferring the nation's sin onto the goat. The high priest confessed aloud all the sins of the nation of Israel. And you can see right here in Leviticus 16:21. This case you need a refresher. And Aharon shall lay both his hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the iniquities of the people of Israel and all their transgressions, all their sins. And he shall put them on the head of the goat and send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a man who is in readiness. All right. All right. We talked about this before, and I got, some real bad looks, especially from Amania, because she just didn't understand nothing I was saying. And she's giving me the evil eye. So we're going to try it again to deal with the verb forms. Now, this right here is the hifpel. The hifpel form is normally employed when this verb is used to convey the confession of natural sin, national sins. For those of you who forgot what the hifpel form is, generally speaking, when it comes to the stem, the hifpel stem expresses the reflected voice of the meaning of a verb in the PL stem. The PL and the call stems are the simplest um, forms of the verb. So hopefully this time with these examples, it'll work. All right. So you have the call or the PL form, which would be he wore. Now the HIF would be he dressed himself. Another example would be he washed. And the HIF would be he washed himself. Then you have he fell, he flung himself, he fell upon, he attacked. And then you have he sold himself, he devoted himself, right? Now, this stem was also employed when the great confessions of Israel's sins were made by Daniel. If you did the prayer challenge, then you read Daniel 9, right? So Daniel 9:4, and then Daniel 9:20, he did this. He did the great confessions for the nation of Israel, not just for himself. As you can see here in Daniel 9:4, I prayed to Yahuwah my Elohim and made confession, saying, O Yahuwah, the great and awesome Elohim, who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments. Now, this is in contrast to the rebellious Israel, from whom Daniel seeks forgiveness and restoration for. Elohim keeps his covenant and his faithful concerning his promise and his faithfulness concerning his promise. It is in this sense of faithfulness to which Daniel can confidently appeal. Because what was he doing in the beginning of the chapter? Let's take a look at that. Now I'm going to read Daniel chapter 9, most of it, well, 1 to 6, I do believe. It's going to come from the TS 2009, which is the scriptures. Okay. In the first year of Dariavich, the son of Ahakvavrosh, of the seed of the Medes, who was set up as sovereign over the reign of the Kasdim. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, observed from the scriptures the number of the years according to the word of Yahuah, given to Yirmiyahu the prophet for the completion of the waste of Jerusalem will be 70 years. And here we go. So I set my face toward Yahuwah the Elohim to seek by prayer and supplications with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. And what did he do here? And I prayed to Yahuwah my Elohim and made confession and said, O Yahuwah, great and awesome El, guarding the covenant and the loving commitment to those who love him and to those who guard his commands. We have sinned and did crookedness. Understand, he said we. He didn't just say me. We have sinned and did crookedness and did wrong and rebelled to turn aside from your commands and from your right rulings. And we have not listened to your servants, the prophets, who spoke in your name to our sovereigns, our heads and our fathers, and to all the people of the land. Now, he said something similar to this in 9 and 20. And while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before Yahuwah Elohim for the set apart mountain of my Elohim. So, with all that being said, Daniel functions as a representative in this passage, right? He identifies himself with sinful Israel and prays on their behalf. And we saw that in verse 5, we have sinned and did crookedness and did wrong and rebelled to turn aside from your commands and from your right rulings. Right? All right. Okay, so again, the stem was also employed when the great confessions of Israel's sins were made by Daniel. So we saw that, but we also see it elsewhere, like we'll see in Ezra 10 and 1, Nehemiah 1 and 6, and Nehemiah 9, 2 and 3. Okay. And this is during and after the Babylonian captivity. So let's take a look at that. Ezra 10 and 1. While Ezra prayed and made confession, weeping and casting himself down before the house of Elohim, a very great assembly of men, women, and children gathered to him out of Israel, for the people wept bitterly. Now, let's take a look at that, at how is that said in the Septuagint. Now, when Esdras or Ezra had prayed and made public confession, weeping and praying before the house of Elohim, there assembled to him a very great congregation, men, women, and youth, because the people wept and made loud lamentation. Now, national confessions of sin were normally public. That's why I pointed out what it said in the Septuagint by when he made public confession. Elohim greatly desires that we acknowledge our sins before him in order to maintain a proper relationship with him. Right? So let's keep it going. Let's go to both Nehemiahs. First, Nehemiah 1 and 6. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant that I now pray before you day and night for the people of Israel, your servants, confessing the sins of the people of Israel, which we have sinned against you. Even I and my father's house have sinned. And Nehemiah 9, 2 and 3. And the Israelites separated themselves from all foreigners and stood and confessed their sins and the iniquities of their fathers. And they stood up in their place and read from the book of the law of Yahuwah, their Elohim, for a quarter of the day. For another quarter of it, they made confession and worshiped Yahuwah, their Elohim. All right, so we are almost done here. Now, we saw an example of this in 1 John 1, 9 and 10. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. If we say we have not sinned, we make him a liar and his word is not in us. Now, this would go back to what we read in Psalms 30, 32 and 5. I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to Yahuah, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin. And then from there, we can compare this with Psalms 51, 1 to 4. Have mercy, or Hanan, on me, or be gracious, O Elohim. According to your steadfast or your hesed love, according to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions and my sin is ever before me. Against you and you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight, so that you may be justified in your words and blameless in your judgment. Now, this brings us all the way back around with David basing his appeal for Elohim's mercy on his faithful, conventional chesed love and his abundant compassion. Because let's understand something. Confession of sin opens a person to, you know, receive what they need to receive from Elohim. When you confess to the Father, you're letting him know that the trust and faith and willingness to obey is stronger than anything that goes against him. Not only does that show obedience to his word, but it also shows maturity in his word. You know, Moreh Chanan talks about being perfect in the word all the time. Well, these are some of the steps that you need to take. You know, it allows you to grow. Now, as you maintain, you get that wisdom that everybody wants, but few are willing to work towards. You know, everybody wants something for nothing. But like we've been stating throughout this, this lesson, everything that we do and everything that we say, you know, when it comes to the Father, He has to see it. This can't be words. Right? All right. So, like I said, a few more things, and we'll wrap this up. Again, when it comes to Todah, um, it means thanksgiving or sacrifice of thanksgiving or a thank offering. This describes the giving of thanks to Elohim, exhortations, declarations of praise and thanksgiving. Now, this noun, this noun is related to the verb yada, to give thanks and to generate thanksgiving to Elohim, as we can see in a couple more examples. We got just a little bit more examples. First, we're going to be in Isaiah 51 and 3. For Yahuah comforts Sion. He comforts all her waste places and makes her wilderness like Eden, her desert like the garden of Yahuah. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the voice of song. See another example of Nehemiah 12 and 38. The other choir of those who gave thanks went to the north, and I followed them with half of the people on the wall, above the tower of the ovens to the broad wall. All right. And we have Jonah 2 and 9. But with the voice of thanksgiving will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will pay. Salvation belongs to Yahuah. And lastly, Psalms 42 and 4. These things I remember as I poured out my soul. How I will go with the throng and lead them in procession to the house of Elohim and glad shouts and songs of praise, a multitude keeping festival. Now, this is always on my mind. Once restored and comforted, we will be full of worship and song. Continually praising the Father. Remember, when it's all said and done, when Shamayim comes down, it will be nothing but praise. So it's only fitting that we practice this now. We show the Father that, when it's time, we will be ready. To be in this truth is to show and prove. Application is key. It's key to salvation. It's key to eternal life, key to forgiveness, what have you. You know, the Father isn't just looking for words. Every lesson we do, we talk about that inner man, right? The things the Father put in place for our ancestors were so they could prove themselves. And obviously, the only thing they could prove in the end was that they could continue to follow the Father's instructions. But that doesn't have to be the same way for us because we have the blueprints, we have the instruction manual. You have righteous instructors in place to teach you what the Father wants you to know. We just have to put all these things into action. Everything that you learn, everything that you take in, you should be practicing. You know, just like with some of us when we're doing this Hebrew class. You know, like Moreh Chanan always says, you need to keep practicing. You shouldn't let up on it a day because you'll start to forget it. And that's what happened with our ancestors. They wasn't practicing, focusing on the Father and His commandments like they said they would do. And so when that happened, they kept losing sight and they kept losing focus on what they should have been doing. So when it comes to us, He's given us this whole entire booklet, right? Showing us the do's and the don'ts. All we have to do is put that stuff into practice. We just have to, you know, come to the general realization that if you accept this covenant, you know, then you accept all, and let me put an emphasis on all. You accept all the things that come with it. You know, and if that's the case, then just do it and see how the Father will work with you from the inside out. That's all there is. It's not that hard to do, but it's just the thing that there are steps that we have to do because our ancestors they blew it up for us, you know. So we have to relearn all of this stuff. All right. Any questions? So what Lamadyahu did was pretty much on point. And that was a testimony he needed to share.
Yeah.
All right.
Any questions? All right.
I come out. Let me stop sharing.
All right. We're gonna have Yahuah gonna close us out in prayer.